Where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments. Before we dive into this heartwarming story, hit subscribe so you'll never miss the most courageous dog tales we share every day. This is more than just a story. It's a testament to hope, perseverance, and the unbreakable bond between a man and his loyal canine. Get ready to be inspired. The humid air hung heavy over the dense cypress groves of Cypress Creek, Louisiana, on a scorching July night. It was the kind of heat that pressed down on your chest, making every breath a chore. But even the oppressive air couldn't suffocate the rising panic that seized Deputy Michael Jones. The call came in at 11:37 p.m. Two boys, 9-year-old Jamal and 7-year-old little Michael Sterling, missing from their campsite deep within the Bayou Teche National Wildlife Refuge. No cell signal, no footprints, just the unnerving symphony of crickets and unseen creatures. By midnight, fear was a tangible thing, twisting in the gut of every responder. Jamal, the older brother, had a history of severe allergies. Little Michael was terrified of the dark. Their father, a man named Robert, scratched and trembling, kept pointing toward the shadowy tree line, his voice a broken whisper. They were just right there. Just right there. But as Michael looked closer at the ground, a single, freshly snapped twig lay near the edge of the father's boot. Too neat, too deliberate for a panicked struggle. A whisper of unease prickled the back of his neck. This is where Canine Shadow entered the nightmare. Shadow wasn't just any canine. He was a legend in the parishes, known for his relentless drive and an uncanny ability to find the lost. But life, as it often does, had dealt Shadow a cruel hand. A severe paw injury a year prior had forced him into early retirement, a decision that weighed heavily on Michael, his former handler and now a seasoned sheriff's deputy. Michael had been there through every triumph, every grueling training session, every moment of Shadow's active duty. But when the frantic call came, there was no hesitation. Shadow might have been slower now, his once boundless energy tempered by age and injury. But his nose? It was still gold. As Michael pulled his dusty patrol truck into the Sterling campsite, Shadow was already pacing in the back, a low, keen whine escaping him. He knew. Somehow, he always knew. And as Michael glanced at the tall, silent pines, a shiver ran down his spine. He remembered a cold case from years ago, a child lost in a similar forest, a case that had haunted him, and where Shadow had first shown his extraordinary, almost psychic connection to the lost. Could this be related? The thought was chilling. The campsite itself was a picture of deceptive calm. A flimsy pop-up tent, a ring of still smoldering firewood, a half-spilled bag of marshmallows on the ground. But then Michael's trained eyes caught the overturned folding chair, two child-sized jackets still hanging from a cooler handle. "Anything?" Michael asked the deputy on scene, his voice tight. "Not a sound," the deputy replied, shaking his head. "No signs of struggle. We've had folks shouting in every direction for 2 hours now." Michael crouched, picking up one of the jackets, a tiny, fleece-lined forest green, a tear in the left sleeve. "This one's little Michael's," Robert, the father, nodded weakly, his eyes hollow. "I told him not to wander too far." Michael stood, unclipped Shadow's lead, his gaze locked on his partner. "Find the boys, Shadow, let's go." The Labrador didn't hesitate, nose down, ears alert. He started toward the tree line, then veered sharply right, into the thickest patch of woods. Michael followed, a silent prayer on his lips, feeling Shadow's familiar determination. About 15 minutes into the search, Shadow began to behave oddly. Not just tracking, but stopping to look behind him, circling, sniffing the wind, then bolting forward again, almost like something was familiar, too familiar. Michael narrowed his eyes. Shadow wasn't just picking up the boy's scent, he was recognizing something else. A phantom trace. They were a good half-mile into the trees when Shadow suddenly froze. He stood still, nose lifted, tail rigid, his body vibrating with tension. Then, without a sound, he bolted left, off-trail, downhill toward what looked like an overgrown ravine. Michael sprinted after him, pushing branches out of his way as the undergrowth thickened. The air grew cooler here, darker, even though it was still early evening, and that's when he saw it, a sight that defied logic. Hidden beneath years of tangled vines and dense brush was an old travel trailer, rusted, tilted, half sunken into the soft earth. It looked like it was being swallowed whole, the kind of vehicle people abandon and forget about. Or try to. Michael's heart pounded. Why hadn't this been found earlier? Why wasn't it marked on any ranger maps? "Shadow!" he called out. He was already at the camper door, scratching, barking, his body low and tense. Michael rushed over, yanked the handle. It wouldn't budge. The door had been welded or locked tight from the outside. That's when he heard it. A faint knock from inside. "Hello," Michael shouted. "Jamal! Little Michael!" Another knock, softer this time. Then a small voice. "Help us!" Michael backed up, slammed into the door with his shoulder. Once, twice. Finally it gave way, the metal creaked open, and the smell hit him instantly. Sweat, rust, damp carpet. Inside, in the gloom, were two boys. Dirty, pale, wrapped in what looked like old blankets, shaking but alive. Shadow rushed to them, licking their faces as they clung to his fur. Jamal, the older boy, started crying. "He told us to stay here," he sobbed. "He said someone would come," Michael frowned. "Who?" The boys looked at each other, hesitant. "We didn't see him, just his boots," little Michael whispered. "He said to wait and to be quiet while we're here." Michael radioed for medical backup immediately. The boys were dehydrated but otherwise unharmed. Their father arrived moments later, sobbing and dropping to his knees when he saw them. Everyone on scene treated it like a miracle, and it was. Shadow had done the impossible. But Michael couldn't shake a single burning question as he stood outside the camper, staring at the rusted body and cracked license plate. Where had this camper come from? It didn't look like it had just been parked there recently. It looked like it had been there for years. This felt fundamentally wrong. That night, while the boys were transported to the hospital, Michael stayed behind with Shadow. He scribbled the license plate numbers, then input the camper's VIN into the system. The result hit him like a physical blow. Reported destroyed. Total loss fire, March 2018. Michael froze. 5 years ago. This camper wasn't supposed to exist. His mind reeled. He had just opened that same camper door. It was real. Rusted, buried under vines and reeking of mold, but very much there. The database insisted it had burned in a fire near Lake Pontchartrain 5 years ago. Insurance claim filed, investigation closed. No foul play suspected. The listed owner, Jack Cooper. "What did we just step into, boy?" Michael whispered to Shadow, ruffling his fur. This wasn't just a simple missing persons case. This was a deliberate deception, a ghost from the past resurrected. By morning, the news hailed Shadow as a hero, but Michael knew the truth was far more sinister. There were holes in this story, big enough to drive a truck through. How could a camper supposedly burned to ashes be hiding 2 live children? And who was the mysterious man the boys described? Michael pulled the original fire report from the county archives. The photos were chilling. The 2018 scene showed a camper engulfed in flames, melted siding, a collapsed roof. No bodies were recovered. Cause, unattended propane stove. Owner, Jack Cooper, marked unreachable. A cold dread crept up Michael's spine as he noticed a crucial detail. The fire had occurred less than a mile from where Shadow found the hidden camper. Either this camper was a phantom survivor, or it had never burned at all. It hit him. Someone had switched them. Burned one for insurance, hid the other. But for what? The chilling realization solidified. This was a staged event, meticulously planned, and for whom? Shadow circled the area where the ghost camper had been, nose working, tail rigid. He barked once, sharp and sure, then sprinted into the brush. Michael followed, his heart pounding with a new urgency. Shadow led him to a tree about 300 feet away. At its base, hidden beneath a fallen branch, was a plastic storage bin. Inside, a child's shoe, a tattered blanket, and a spiral notebook with crayon scribbles. Not Jamal's. Not little Michael's. "Dear God," Michael whispered. These were from another child. Back at the station, Michael put in a request for missing children cases within a 100-mile radius. The results came back heavier than expected. One case jumped off the screen. Lena Coleman, age 6, vanished in 2019 from a rest stop, never seen again. Her tiny white sneaker with a pink flower matched the one in the bin. This guy's been doing this a long time, Michael thought. And he wasn't just kidnapping, he was collecting. Quietly, carefully, always just out of reach. Shadow, usually calm, let out a low guttural growl, his hackles slightly raised. He nudged the notebook with his nose, then looked up at Michael, his eyes unusually intense. It wasn't just a scent he was reacting to, it was the raw emotion embedded in those scribbles. The unspoken fear of children. Shadow was sensing something deeper, something profoundly disturbing about the mind behind these disappearances. That night, Shadow wouldn't settle. He kept pacing near the back door, growling low under his breath. Michael went outside to check, flashlight in hand, but found nothing. But Shadow was right, they were being watched. A trail camera captured a chilling image. A man in a hoodie standing at the edge of the trees, just watching. No movement, no panic. The timestamp, 30 minutes after the boys were rescued. Michael zoomed in on the man's blurry outline, no face, but those boots, military style, tan leather, high-laced, exactly like the ones the boys described. The next morning, Michael sat with Shadow examining the crayon drawings. One page stood out, 3 stick figures inside a box. Outside, a large black dog, and a figure drawn in all red. Above it, in shaky writing, he said, "Stay quiet, the dog would come." Michael looked down at Shadow. He knew we'd come, but how? And more importantly, why now? Suddenly, Shadow let out a sharp, frustrated whine, nudging Michael's hand. He then pushed the notebook open to a new page, a drawing Michael hadn't noticed before. A stick figure of a dog, with a single black line representing a scar on its paw. Shadow then gently licked his own injured paw. A cold dread seeped into Michael's bones. This wasn't just a random watcher. This person knew about Shadow's injury. This was personal. This wasn't just a case. It was a carefully constructed game, and Michael and Shadow were the next players. Michael pulled an all-nighter, sifting through old case files. Buried deep, he found a dispatch log from a noise complaint in South Baton Rouge, dated October 29, 2018. Children's voices, and howling from a burned-out mobile home lot. Dismissed as a Halloween prank, Michael remembered that night. He had been the responding officer making the call. A chilling realization struck him. Jack Cooper had been watching him, studying him. Even then, Jack had seen the man shying away when he turned the corner, along with a hood. He knew Michael's patterns, he knew his limits. He wasn't just playing a game, he was playing him. Cooper was a master manipulator, orchestrating not just the disappearances but the entire narrative of discovery. He wasn't just a kidnapper, he was a twisted artist, a puppet master orchestrating a perverse game of hide-and-seek. He wasn't collecting trophies, he was collecting experiences, moments of engineered loss and miraculous discovery. The children weren't just victims, they were unwitting players in his elaborate narrative. Michael drove to Cooper's last known address, a rundown farmhouse in Acadiana Parish. Shadow, in the passenger seat, began to growl, a deep, guttural sound he hadn't heard since his active duty days. This was all Michael needed to know. Something here was profoundly wrong. The farmhouse was a picture of abandonment, yet the front door stood slightly ajar. "Sheriff's Department," Michael called out, weapon drawn, no answer. Shadow, low and tense, nudged the door open. The inside smelled of dust and mildew, but it wasn't empty. There was a mattress, canned food, scattered clothes, some adult, some child-sized, and taped to the wall, hundreds of children's drawings, some innocent, some chilling. One showed a man in front of a camper holding a sign, "He waits." Another, children hiding under a bed while a dark shape stood outside. Michael's stomach twisted. Then Shadow let out a sharp bark. He was staring at a trap door beneath an old rug. Michael pulled it open. Wooden stairs led into darkness. The basement. It wasn't a typical horror scene, no chains, no stains, just silence and shelves filled with old VHS tapes, each labeled with a name and a date. L. Coleman 1419, M. Sanchez 62216, L. Sterling 31123. Little Michael's name. His blood ran cold. This wasn't just a collection, it was a library of his twisted experiments. Michael grabbed the tape and ran. Whatever this place was, it had been left behind quickly, recently. Back at the station, Michael hooked up an ancient VCR. The tape showed Jamal and little Michael in the camper, confused but unharmed. A soft, calm male voice spoke from off-camera. "We're going to stay very still, okay? Just until your dog finds you. He's a good dog. He'll come." The voice, so calm, was terrifying. Shadow whimpered in the corner. "He wasn't just talking to the boys," Michael realized. "Was talking to me." FBI agent Kendra Davies confirmed his fears. Cooper fit the profile of a collector. Emotionally manipulative but non-violent. He had applied for foster care multiple times, denied due to excessive attachment. He was practicing, Kendra stated. Michael looked at the drawings again. One, in pencil, not crayon, showed a young girl with hollow eyes. "I was found, but I'm still here." Cooper was leaving clues. A breadcrumb trail for those who understood his code. He was orchestrating his own twisted narrative, a game where the rescuers were as much a part of the plot as the victims. That night, Michael and Shadow returned to the woods. Michael stood in the clearing, flashlight off. "I know you're watching," he said softly. No response. But Shadow sat, staring towards the trees. Then Michael saw it. A postcard tacked to a tree. An old amusement park, Liberty Grove Family Fun Center, long closed. On the back, "You're not done. I'm still waiting. Bring the dog." No signature, just GPS coordinates. Cooper had chosen his hunting ground long ago, and he'd never really left. By dawn, Michael had mapped the coordinates. They pointed to a remote area outside Vermilion Parish, nestled deep in the woods. There were no buildings on record, no cell towers, no patrols, just trees, rock, and an old water treatment trail long since abandoned. Kendra wanted a SWAT team, but Michael refused. "He doesn't run when we show up in force, he vanishes." He glanced at Shadow. "I'm not alone." The drive to Vermilion Parish was slow, winding, and mostly silent. Michael kept his windows cracked and his hand on Shadow's back as he stood with his head just behind the front seats, ears on high alert. They parked at a narrow trailhead just before the GPS signal faded. From there, it was all forest. Dense. Uneasy. Still. They walked for nearly an hour, following the coordinates as they narrowed, step by step, into an area that looked no different from any other part of the Louisiana wilderness. Until Shadow stopped cold. He sniffed once, then barked sharply. Michael followed his gaze. There, partially covered by brush and a torn blue tarp, was a small metal hatch embedded into the hillside. He brushed the leaves away. It had a lock, rusted, simple. He took a deep breath, reached into his bag and pulled out a pry tool. With one sharp pull, the latch gave way. The hatch creaked open. A narrow staircase led down into Shadow. Michael pulled a flashlight and descended slowly, Shadow at his heel. The air was damp and stale. The walls were concrete. Whoever had built this had done it carefully. At the bottom he found a small room, a cot, a stack of canned food, books, coloring pages, batteries, and in the corner, an old cassette recorder, already running. Cooper's voice echoed softly, "And when the world forgets, someone always remembers. That's what dogs are for, to remember the ones no one else can find." Then silence. On the wall written in chalk, "She's still waiting." Michael exhaled slowly, turning to Shadow. They were close. But Cooper wasn't leading them to an end. He was leading them deeper into his elaborate, chilling maze. The abandoned amusement park looked like something out of a dream or a nightmare. Liberty Grove Family Fun Center, once a staple for families, was now a ghost town, swallowed by weeds and rust. Michael Jones stood at the broken front gate, Shadow by his side, ears perked, nose twitching. The gate creaked in the morning wind, a sound like a living thing. This was Cooper's final breadcrumb. A trap? A graveyard? Or was someone still waiting? Michael moved cautiously through the overgrown pathway, the silence amplified by the memories of laughter that once filled this place. As they moved past the old arcade building, Shadow suddenly froze. He turned sharply toward the faded lost and found shack near the back fence, low growl, tail rigid. Michael unholstered his weapon and crept forward. The shack door was cracked open. Inside, the air smelled of dust, old candy, and mildew. Then he saw it. A child's backpack. Pink, sparkled with tiny stars. A name tag hung from the zipper. Lena. Michael's throat tightened. He stepped inside slowly. In the corner sat a young girl, curled up on a sleeping bag, clutching the same plush fox from South Baton Rouge. She looked up, not afraid, just tired. "Hi," the girl said, her voice barely a whisper. Michael lowered his weapon. "Hey, sweetie, my name's Michael. You're safe now." The girl blinked. "He said the dog would come." Shadow moved forward and gently rested his head in the girl's lap. She didn't cry, she just whispered, "I knew it." As Lena clung to Shadow, a faint rustle came from behind a stack of old arcade machines. Michael spun, weapon raised. A figure darted into the shadows, gone before he could get a clear look. Cooper, he was here. He had seen the reunion. This was his grand finale, not a trap for them, but a spectacle for himself, a final twisted performance. Michael radioed it in. The FBI arrived within minutes. Lena Coleman, missing since 2019, was alive, malnourished, pale, but alive. Kendra pulled Michael aside as EMTs checked Lena's vitals. "We found fresh tire tracks near the maintenance road and shoe prints, size 12, steel 2E boots. He was here." Michael nodded. Of course he was. Kendra looked at him, eyes filled with frustration. "How the hell does he keep slipping through?" Michael didn't answer. He didn't have to, because this had never been about catching Cooper. It had been about unraveling him, piece by piece, child by child, clue by clue. And now the thread was almost gone. Back at the station later that night, Michael sat in silence with Shadow at his feet. Lena was at the hospital talking to child psychologists who were trying to gently unpack her experience. What she'd said during transport still echoed in Michael's mind. He didn't hurt me. He just talked, told me stories, taught me games, said he was waiting for the right moment. The right moment for what? For Michael? For Shadow? For some grand finale only Cooper could imagine? A knock at the station door broke his thoughts. It was a courier. Envelope, no return address. Michael opened it with gloved hands. Inside was a Polaroid photo. It showed Michael, taken from a distance, walking Shadow along the trail behind the station. The timestamp was from 2 nights earlier. Behind the photo, a handwritten note. You've always been the one, the only one who saw it, the only one he couldn't break. But I never wanted to break you. I wanted you to finish the story. Signed, J.C. Michael's breath caught. He looked at Shadow. He stared back at him with calm certainty. For weeks, the FBI combed every lead, but Cooper had vanished again. No fingerprints, no sightings, nothing. Still, they had Lena, and they had evidence. Years of tapes, drawings, and journals, all proving his long, obsessive manipulation. But no closure, no arrest. 3 months later, Lena Coleman was officially reunited with her mother. A private ceremony was held at the community center, with minimal press. Michael and Shadow stood quietly at the back of the room. When Lena saw them, she smiled for the first time. She ran to Shadow without hesitation, throwing her arms around his neck. He remembered, she said softly, just like he said he would. Michael knelt beside them. He always does, sweetheart. That night, Michael sat on his porch. Shadow curled next to him as a summer breeze moved through the trees. He didn't know if Cooper was still alive, didn't know if he'd ever show himself again, but as Shadow gently nudged his hand, Michael understood. This wasn't about a final capture. It was about a different kind of victory. Every child found was a piece of Cooper's twisted game disassembled, a light brought back to a family. Each rescue was a quiet, powerful declaration against the darkness he sought to create. Shadow, with his unwavering spirit, was not just a dog, he was a beacon for the lost. A living promise that even in the deepest shadows, hope would always find a way. And for Michael, facing the quiet woods, he knew his fight wasn't over. Not until every whisper in the woods was silenced, and every lost soul was remembered. There's some stories that never truly end. They echo across time, across people, across generations of silent heroes who never ask for recognition, and sometimes they have 4 legs and a badge number etched into an old metal tag. Canine Shadow wasn't just a hero, he was the one who found them. Every time. Thank you for following this powerful story of canine loyalty, redemption, and the dark truths hidden in forgotten places. Now, it's your turn to weigh in. Do you believe Jack Cooper was always planning to be caught? Or was this his way of passing the torch to someone else? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and remember, heroes come in many forms. Some of them just happen to bark,